First, live, local. Good Day Oregon starts now on Fox 12 Oregon.
It's now been more than 24 hours. 13 activists still hanging from the St. John's Bridge in protest of Shell Oil. And the ship they're trying to block has not left. We have live coverage this morning as the protests continue. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Good Day Oregon. Today is Thursday, July 30th. I'm Pete Ferryman.
And I'm Kimberly Moss. All right, get ready for the heat. If you thought yesterday was warm, wait until you hear about today. We are expecting triple-digit temperatures in several areas. Find out if your neighborhood is one of them.
We begin with developing news with images that have been seen around the country and around the world. Greenpeace protesters remain suspended below the St. John's Bridge this morning.
They don't appear to be leaving anytime soon, and the Shell Oil ice-breaking ship scheduled to leave the port of Portland dry dock also hasn't moved. Fox 12's Anthony Conji is at Cathedral Park in North Portland, where day 2 of the protest is now underway. Good morning, Anthony.
Well, good morning to both you, Kim and Pete. And as you mentioned, those 13 protesters still hanging this morning. We are seeing some of those flags waving from their ropes this morning, so you can get a little bit better idea this morning of where exactly they are, which we didn't see yesterday. Again, still hanging from the bridge, and you think they have to be feeling both good about not having the ship leave yesterday, but I'm also sure they're probably pretty uncomfortable about starting another day suspended above the Willamette. After day 1, Greenpeace is claiming victory on social media. The Fennica ice-breaking ship did not leave its dry dock yesterday. Shell says its departure is still to be determined. Now, the Fennica is used as an escort icebreaker during the winter months and in offshore construction projects during open water season. Now, it is scheduled to be in the Arctic by the time Shell Oil tries to get its final permits to drill. But again, it is still here in Portland this morning. Now, Portland police officers are keeping a close eye on things, but so far the Bureau has not made any arrests and has not tried to disrupt the demonstrations. Now, those activists were cheered on yesterday by hundreds of people below and by fellow kayak activists who were also blocking the water yesterday. And they were also cheered by hundreds of people who came down to Cathedral Park throughout the day to see the protest firsthand.
We just showed up because we heard there was this protest of the boat that's going supporting Shell's drilling in the Arctic, and we're completely against that, and we just wanted to be part of this.
Actually, it looks pretty fun. I would like to be up there right now. It'd be breezy. Maybe hot, actually, with the sun.
Now, the second person we spoke to there was so taken by the spectacle, she decided to actually capture it on canvas. But of course, not everyone is for this protest. We'll hear from some of Greenpeace's detractors in just a bit. But another factor yesterday, and again, it's going to be today, is the weather. Each of the 13 protesters hanging does have an anchor and support system above them on the bridge who's making sure they're doing all right, getting them food and water when needed. And it's going to be interesting to see as we get closer to 100 degrees today, what it's going to be like for those protesters up there this morning. Reporting live, I'm Anthony Conji. Good Day, Oregon.
Well, new this morning, a man is accused of assaulting an officer and then leading police on a manhunt. Fox 12's Kimberly Eaton is live in Southeast Portland with how it all ended. Kim, good morning.
Good morning. That suspect only got about half a mile away. They say he attacked an officer here at 137th and Stark and then ran. Now, that was around 12:30 this morning. Portland police out here to investigate a disturbance. They say a lot of people were in the area, and one guy in particular was visibly upset. While an officer tried to figure out whether or not there'd been a crime, the other tried to talk to that man, and police say that's when some kind of altercation happened. He assaulted the officer and took off. Police and canine officers found the man about half a mile away near 132nd and Washington, and this morning he is in custody. The officer is recovering from a head injury, but we're told should be okay. At this point, police aren't giving us either of their names, but do tell us that that Portland police officer has been with their bureau for about 7 years. Reporting live in Southeast Portland this morning, I'm Kimberly Eaton. Back to you.
All right, Kimberly, thank you. You know, it's an important warning, and we hear about it and talk about it every year. But it seems that a lot of people are not paying attention. Authorities say people need to stop leaving their kids and pets in hot cars. Just yesterday, police in Eugene responded to 3 cases of children being left inside hot cars. It appears that the kids are all going to be okay. However, in one case, some children were so overheated, witnesses heard them screaming for help. As you know, the temperature in cars rises dramatically and can be deadly on warm, sunny days. And speaking of the heat, another heat wave is well underway right here in the metro area.
Yeah, you can feel it this morning. It's already getting quite warm. New research from Portland State University shows that some areas of the city will be even hotter than others. Fox 12's Deborah Gill joins us now from Northeast Portland with a look at the spots you might want to avoid. Very interesting research, Deb.
It really is, Kim. Good morning to you and Pete. We're on Northeast Sandy, and as you get closer into town, this is one of the hottest spots in the metro area. It's taken years for these researchers to complete what they call heat mapping of the city. A Portland State professor collected temperature readings from across the city. His team found that temps can vary up to 15 degrees within just a quarter mile or less in some areas. Now, the coolest places you would expect have lots of tall trees and few buildings, places like Forest Park. The hottest spots are along stretches of major roadways surrounded by concrete buildings, like here on Sandy Boulevard, 82nd Avenue, MLK, and Northwest Portland's industrial area. The professor says they found concrete readings in those areas to be around 140 degrees on hot days.
That can mean often the difference between somebody who's actually doing pretty well on a 90-degree day versus somebody else who could really be suffering in a 105-degree on the same day in the same city, just a different location. A lot of people don't know that there's more fatalities through an urban heat wave than there are when you add up all the other natural disasters combined.
Wow, yeah, Professor Shandus shared his map with city officials, and they've now put it into their climate action plan. Now, if you'd like to check out the map for yourself, we've put a link to it on our website, kptv.com. And of course, you can always get the latest information on our newscast from our fantastic meteorologists, as well as our Fox 12 mobile weather app. Reporting live in Northeast Portland, Deborah Gill. Good day, Oregon.
All right, Deb, thank you.
We start with that developing news. We're now entering our second day of the Greenpeace demonstration against Shell Oil.
So far, activists have succeeded in preventing an icebreaker from leaving the port of Portland. Fox 12's Anthony Kanji joins us live now from the St. John's Bridge with the latest developments. Good morning, Anthony.
Well, good morning to you. The latest development, as we just saw from Air 12, and we're going to go right back to that, is for the very first time, we are now seeing the Fennica going away from the dry dock and is actually now in the water this morning. Now, we have not heard officially whether it is planning on leaving the port of Portland today. Obviously, a huge ice-breaking vessel that is planned to go up to the Arctic, but also what the protesters are here for, to stop it from doing that. Again, we saw the Coast Guard come underneath the bridge about a half hour ago. We did know that when the ship was going to leave, the Coast Guard was going to be involved in that. This is still developing. We have not heard officially that the Fennica is going to be leaving on the Willamette River, and we don't know exactly what that means for the protesters. We haven't seen an increase from where we're at in terms of a police presence or a Coast Guard presence around the bridge, besides that ship that went underneath it this morning. But obviously, again, this is something the protesters have been waiting for. They were able to keep it from leaving yesterday. It was scheduled to leave at 10 o'clock yesterday, and now as we're in the 6 o'clock hour of day 2, it appears that things are starting to move over at the Port of Portland area. But again, that's something that we're just keeping an eye on at this point. Air 12 still overhead showing us, once again, the Fennica that was dry docked here at the Port of Portland is now in the water. We did contact the Coast Guard about some plans for it to leave. They said they have not heard anything officially yet. Again, we learned yesterday it is going to be up to Shell to decide when they do decide to leave. As we come back out here live where we're positioned here underneath the St. John's Bridge, once again, the 13 protesters still dangling up above this morning. We've seen them up and around a little bit, taking pictures. I did see a tweet from one of the people on the bridge a little bit earlier this morning saying that they did see movement in and around the Fennica this morning. But again, we are waiting to see what exactly that means and whether it does plan on leaving on the Willamette this morning. We, of course, will keep you posted on what we find out on this now developing story that could be changing any minute now. Reporting live, I'm Anthony Kanji. We'll send it back to you in the studio.
Hey, Anthony, really quickly, I just wanted to clarify. You said that you saw a Coast Guard presence there near the bridge earlier. Was there a Coast Guard ship that made its way near the bridge? Is that what you're saying, or was there somebody just on land looking at the situation?
No, there was a ship that came through about a half hour ago, a large size one that came right underneath the protesters and made its way over toward the dry dock. And then what we found out yesterday is that the Coast Guard is going to be the ones likely leading the Fennica out if it does go, and we saw them heading toward the Port of Portland. So at this point, we're standing by, waiting to see what that exactly could mean.
We are going to move away from this story. We'll, of course, have more on this coming up this morning, but we want to take you back to live pictures from Air 12 in the water near the St. John's Bridge, where the Shell Oil icebreaker appears to be heading out now.
Yeah, this is really kind of what we've been waiting for, this showdown, if you will. This is the Fennica, that icebreaking ship heading up into Arctic waters, or at least attempting to. About 2 miles away is where those protesters are dangling from ropes below the St. John's Bridge. Tony has been watching this too. Tony, we saw that the ship exit dry dock, be back into the water. We saw that boom there be removed, and now we are seeing some movement, some smoke coming from the stacks there. So, yeah, obviously, one would assume that the ship is attempting to get underway.
Yeah, and also in the same shot, you can see a few of the Coast Guard vehicles, boats out there. I saw, one larger one, one smaller one. I'm not sure if that happens to be one right there. That is, in fact, in the bottom right of your screen. But again, just, were they to head right to the bridge, they could probably make that trip in less than 10 minutes. But they're obviously going very, very slowly. Also, Kim got an email from a viewer
who travels the bridge every morning on his way to work.
Right.
He just written to me and said that police have closed the bridge.
Yeah, and I have a camera up on top of that, and I can confirm that there's no one's going either direction.
Okay.
Car traffic closed at this point.
So then the question becomes, if they are planning to, make their way under the bridge, the Coast Guard, if they're planning on leading this ship out, what is their strategy? You have to think that there's been some planning in the last 24 hours as to how to address this. Again, this is under the jurisdiction of the U.S. Coast Guard, and that may come into play here. It's not the Portland police who are handling this. It's the U.S. Coast Guard, and they take the business of shipping very seriously, and any threats to the navigation of a ship that right now, under the law, is allowed to travel on these waters.
Yeah, and but coincidentally, we just saw river traffic going southbound on the Willamette.
Yep.
And accordingly, the protesters dangling off the St. John's Bridge raised themselves up.
Sure.
As they've been doing, right.
Right, to allow that traffic through. Obviously, Anthony at the scene there, and almost from the same angle, you could see the bridge where we to turn the camera that way, but I'm assuming they would, in fact, try and lower themselves down again, perhaps.
It might be interesting to take Anthony's shot and check in with him here in a minute or two, or whenever we can, because I would imagine that there's some activity, or at least word is starting to spread there at the bridge as they prepare for this confrontation. What it is that they plan to do. Are they really going to lower themselves in the path of this ship? It's almost a game of chicken, if you will.
Yeah, and that is Anthony's shot. They're looking southbound from his position. You can see the Fremont Bridge there in the right corner, and then to the left, you can see the Fennica there.
But I guess if we were to see the protesters, to see if there's any change in activity from them.
And that's a railroad bridge there that's been raised accordingly to allow river traffic through.
So you have to wonder how effective that technique would be if all those people dangling from ropes tethered together.
Okay, so
here's another picture from Air 12. We can see better what those protesters are doing right now.
So is that, if they lower themselves and that ship keeps going, the question is what's going to happen? And what strategy do they have to get through them?
From what we've been seeing over the last day or so, that they appear to be higher than they were previously. Yeah. So at this point, that you would assume that the Fennica could make it under if they were to remain in that position. That's, of course, the big question, right?
Yeah. And you would think that if they do plan to stick to their plan, which is lowering themselves to block the Fennica, if they're making preparations now to do so. But you're thinking, Tony, maybe 10 minutes or so?
If they should go directly. I mean,
if they went directly.
Sure, but I mean, that's, if they were just to head right out there. Also, in that same shot, you can see towards the top of the screen, that's the St. John's Bridge. Nobody going either way. So if you're just tuning in, because of all this, no car traffic, no pedestrian traffic, no bike traffic at all on the St. John's Bridge, either direction. Closed at Highway 30, closed at St. John's.
That's, of course, going to create quite the backup for people who are trying to commute.
There really is no other way across.
Right.
You got to come down to I-5 down to the Fremont Bridge, or take 30 down and cross that way.
Yeah, you have to wonder, And we are going to stay with this, folks, because it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. You have to wonder what the strategy is, what the Coast Guard has come up with. You know, we've certainly seen, you know, water cannons being used on protesters in the past to get them to move out of the way as a last resort. We, you know, certainly don't know that would happen here. Whether there would be an announcement over a bullhorn to move out of the way or be subject to arrest. Whether, you know, they're working in coordination with Portland police up on top of the bridge to try to somehow raise those people up from those ropes that they've rappelled down from.
Yeah, and for the first time, we're actually seeing a little bit of a wake behind the Fennica, so they've obviously picked up a little bit of speed as they left that dry dock. Fortunately, from Air 12, we'll be able to see all that, because if they are trying to work with people on the bridge, we would see that really well from Air 12 if we need to look at that area as well.
And again, it might be interesting to hear from Anthony at some point as soon as we can dial in and see what his perspective is on as far as the activity, if it's changed there with the protesters. The bridge, by the way, about 205 feet above the water. Yeah. The Fennica rises 130 feet above the water. So we're talking about a 75-foot area of clearance.
Yeah, that's fine.
That the ship needs, and it's just a question of whether or not those protesters can or will stop the ship.
All right, let's get to Anthony Conji now. We have dialed him in, and let's get some perspective from him. He is near the St. John's Bridge. Anthony?
Yeah, changing by the minute, as you guys were talking about. We are seeing some of the protesters start to lower themselves from the bridge here. We are seeing movement in the Fennica, and we are actually seeing the railroad bridge raise. Now, we have Mary Nickel from Greenpeace USA here with us. So this is the moment you guys have been waiting for. What is the plan at this point?
That's right. So these courageous activists have been on the bridge now for over 24 hours, and they are prepared to stand in the way of Shell getting to the Arctic.
So what exactly does that mean? Are they going to lower themselves as low as possible, maybe be hit by this boat? What exactly does that mean?
Safety is definitely the #1 priority, and so we'll just have to see how it unfolds.
Have you been in contact at all with the Coast Guard about what they may or may not do?
I personally haven't been in contact with the Coast Guard, but we have a safety team who's definitely in touch. Mostly, you know, we're here because this is our opportunity to delay Shell from getting up into the Arctic and to send a message to President Obama that he needs to reconsider his decision.
The Fennica now in the water. Have you guys been preparing for this? Into what capacity have you?
Yeah, so the climbers are definitely up there because they want to stand in the way of Shell getting up to the Arctic.
Okay. What's going to be done at this point now, really? What are we going to be seeing?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, you know, the climbers are getting in place, and so we'll be here live and we'll watch it as it unfolds.
Yeah, so as you just heard, a lot of unknowns at this point in terms of what exactly is going to happen, what the Coast Guard is going to do, how police are going to be involved, and what exactly this means for the climbers. So one of those situations, we're just kind of sitting around and standing and watching and waiting to see what exactly happens. So we'll send it back to you guys in the studio right now.
I mean, this ship is massive. I mean, I would say from where the protesters are hanging, it's halfway up the ship. So if it were to happen, you're definitely going to see some type of contact. But by how low the protesters are to where the ship is, I mean, there's no way it wouldn't happen if that's the case. Now, the Coast Guard is still making one announcement with one ship, but 3 other ones are still falling a little bit farther back, and they're kind of just circling, it seems, talking to each other. And my guess is trying to figure out what exactly they're going to do.
Yeah, but no movement from protesters, right?
You are unwelcome in our
Yeah, say that again one more time.
No movement from protesters. If anything, people are going into the water. They're not coming out.
Against Greenpeace and those acting with.
That's it. Yeah, they have not moved. They have not lowered themselves any farther, but they've definitely not gone up either. They have held tight now. They've been in position from where they were. Yep, they are holding their ground. That's the exact way to say it. But we are hearing those announcements a few more times now, and it does look like the Fennica is slowly moving. It's definitely not going as fast as it was, but it's
getting closer.
If it is parked.
Yeah.
Is it just me?
It appears that it's getting closer, but it's going very slow.
Is it just me, or have some of those protesters raise themselves up a little bit? It might just be the perspective of the camera, so forgive me there. But you're saying they still are, you know, well within the range of striking the ship, which is about 130 feet tall, right? Yeah, you can see that there. Yeah, okay. So
yeah, absolutely.
If you're just now joining us,
if they have, I mean, it's not noticeable.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Anthony. If you're just now joining us, folks, we're watching live breaking news coverage. The icebreaker, the Fennica, trying to make its way up to the Arctic to take part in oil drilling with the Shell Oil Corporation. These protesters, having been here for more than 24 hours, hanging there from the bridge trying to block that from happening.
Yeah, and it almost appears that these are moving more toward the center. They had been off to the side, but again, hard to see from Air 12, but quite a few people still in the water and nobody making their way out. They're holding their ground.
As I look at this, that would mean distance from the Fennica, not from the Coast Guard boats themselves.
Correct, yes.
So they're definitely enforcing that, it would appear, with that one kayaker anyway.
But, you know, as it stands now, Greenpeace has, for the moment, stopped the Fennica, the ice-breaking Shell oil ship, from moving out of the Portland area up to the Arctic.
It's been sitting for what, about 10, 15 minutes now, maybe longer?
Yeah, maybe closer to 20.
Yeah,
it got very close, began moving, you know, about, I'd say an hour or so ago, right? It came out of dry dock. Proceeded very slowly, very carefully, but was making steady progress towards the bridge and has gotten to probably within, let's say, half mile, quarter mile, and has, you know, come to a stop. That's what you see right there.
Yeah, if you're just now joining us, you know, this morning when we went on the air at 4:30, there was no indication that the ship was moving or it's getting ready to move. But then, as the hours went on, we saw, you know, the ship leave dry dock. We saw the boom that was surrounding it be moved, and then we saw the ship make its way toward the St. John's Bridge and those protesters. And here we are, a stalemate, at least for the time being. The Coast Guard having issued warnings, we heard those over the loudspeaker, telling these folks to get out of the way, that they're in violation of federal law, that they will be cited. Obviously, that's not enough motivation for them to move at this point.
Well, there are a variety of plans that have been discussed, and they're all situational. And depending on what happens, it can depend on who makes a call. For example, you know, the police bureau doesn't have any boats, so we're not making any decisions based on what's happening in the water. So if it's still on land, we can certainly assist with those roles. So it is a very fluid situation. We have been in communication with all the partner agencies on a number of contingencies, but at this point, there's been no request for our assistance beyond traffic control.
All right, Pete Simpson with the Portland Police Bureau, thank you very much for taking time out to speak with us. And boy, it's just a wait and see at this point, because things have been stalled now for about a half hour. No movement.
There's so many variables, and I think that, that Pete did a great job of describing that. You know, if one thing happens, well, then this is the response. If another thing happens, then this is the response. But, you know, I can hear... And I don't know, Tony, if you're seeing movement there.
Well, what I'm seeing to the left of the Fennica, which you see towards the right of your screen,
is other river traffic.
Commercial river traffic.
Okay.
Quite a bit lower, significantly lower height than the Fennica, but it is heading the direction of the St. John's Bridge, and presumably would be hoping to pass.
I wonder if the Coast Guard would let them. You know,
all we can do is watch and see. This is a tugboat pushing a barge, and then they're heading up, you know, just going to be passing below the St. John's Bridge here in a matter of moments. And Anthony, perhaps you can see better from where you are as well, but do you see this barge approaching the bridge?
Yeah, we do, and it looks like it has 3 big towers of some type, and it's hard for me to see from this point how tall those are. We do know that the activists that are hanging from the bridge do have the ability to go up and down, and they have been able to let traffic come through, and my guess is that they would do the same here with this one, because they said that the entire time. Greenpeace said that they didn't want to stop commercial traffic.
We just want to pop in for a second.
This could be strategy.
Just observe that what's on that barge is a cherry picker.
Okay, so here we go.
If we can go a little closer, you can see that's the piece of equipment that is on that barge. That's heading towards St. John's.
At this
that
point,
makes things very interesting too. We're seeing some of the Coast Guard people start to come together. It looks like they're maybe talking about, you know, what exactly they're going to do. So maybe the cherry picker is going to be. Wow. God, we don't know at this point.
We're taking it to a different level now.
It's developing by the minute, as you said.
Of course, we don't want to speculate as to what the enforcement plan is, but when you see a cherry picker on a barge and you've got people hanging from a bridge there, you would imagine that this is probably part of the plan. Now, how it is that they're going to do this, that's going to be interesting, and what type of resistance, if they do indeed use that cherry picker to go up there with Coast Guard officers to take these people down, you know, one by one, who are all roped together.
No easy task.
That's going to be a neat trick, but it's going to be a challenge.
Indeed, yeah.
It does look like now it is slowing down, not as going as fast as it was. It's kind of hard to tell because now it's past where we're at.
Yeah, I think the assumption is still that this is
to have it at the location.
This is part of the possible enforcement activity, and maybe it's just a shot across the bow, if you will, letting these protesters know that they have, you know, the ability, the Coast Guard, to physically reach them. The technology exists in a cherry picker to physically reach these protesters with an armed Coast Guard officer, perhaps, to remove them.
Then again, Port of Portland, very close to this area. I'm sure they use cherry pickers.
They do use cherry pickers.
So, hey guys, we got to talk to you real fast. It looks like the Fennica is turning. We're gonna swing the camera around, and we're seeing the broad side of the boat coming, and it looks like it's turning. It's physically.
Yeah, we can see that, Anthony.
I don't know if it's turning around or if it's repositioning, but it is definitely moving.
Yeah, we're looking at a
fastest
shot
movement we've seen yet from the Fennica this morning.
Absolutely.
We can see that from Air 12, Anthony, and you're right. It is coming completely around at this point.
Well, you know, we heard Pete Simpson with the Portland Police Bureau, and we heard the representative from the Coast Guard both saying that, look, the safety of everyone, including the protesters, is the top priority.
And Pete, we've been talking, it's not just a lot of people in the water. We've got the people who are suspended above the water with the tethers, and, you know, strategy here is very delicate because of the safety that you're speaking of.
Yeah, one goes down, down goes.
Now, the one thing we have not seen yet, we have not seen the railroad bridge go back up. We're not seeing any movement on that. It obviously did before, and that's usually the dead giveaway that it would be heading back toward where it was dry docked yesterday.
That barge we talked about, it also now looks like it's starting to turn a little bit
as well, the one that had the cherry picker on it, but it does look like the Fennica's just still turning. It's almost completely 180 from where it was just even 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
I'm still not seeing the railroad bridge going up though.
Turning is one thing, you know, if it starts
moving back to dock,
moving back to where it came from, that would be different. It's hard to, you know, judge the intent of a vessel from you know, the altitude of Air 12 right now, but it certainly has the protesters cheering, Tony.
Yeah, and Anthony, were you saying then that the barge we saw with that cherry picker, that's slowed and perhaps beginning to circle back towards the bridge again and sort of stopped going north?
It's actually, it looks like it's actually going back farther up the river. It's moving away farther up the river from where we're at. So the two boats are actually heading in opposite directions of each other.
Yeah, we can see it now, perhaps slower than it was moving earlier.
I don't think it's leaving the area. Yeah. I think our initial assumption,
it looks like it's stopped right now,
may still be valid.
But perhaps, yeah.
That is, you know, a pawn or a part of the enforcement play here, if needed. So the Coast Guard and the various other agencies.
It's definitely moving. You can see it from here.
Oh, look at this. We have
it's going away from where we're at.
Do you see this parasailer?
An ultralight, looks like.
Is it an ultralight? Things are
say that one more time. I'm sorry.
Do you see the parasailer where you are, Anthony?
Yeah, I saw somebody like almost like a motorized type. It was like almost like a parachute.
You know. Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Okay. I see it. It's like one of those ones with the fan on the back of it.
Yeah. And boy, you just have to hope with all those ropes going across the bridge.
It's a delicate situation
everybody is
here.
Careful. You know, you have the Greenpeace protesters who are there, who are organized, perhaps more so than some of the other people who have joined the fray here. But we heard from the one gentleman who came down, I think from the Puget Sound area, who said, look, I can't get arrested. I got to leave the country. I don't want my passport to get swiped.
Yeah.
So there are some people who are there who are prepared to get arrested, other people who are joining in any way they can. We don't know who this person is, but they're joining the party, it seems, and trying to make their statement in their own way. Meanwhile, the standoff continues. Now, can we see if the Fennica, it did turn, but is it moving?
Yep.
It is moving back
right now
toward...
it is stopped.
Stopped. Okay, yeah, we don't see a wake behind it. It's turned.
But the Coast Guard boats are definitely heading
back towards
dry dock.
Perhaps escorting it back to that dry dock area where it was.
It does look like it's moving, but yeah, it does look like it's if it's moving, not moving very fast.
No.
It's at least stopped or moving very slowly, but it's completely turned around from where it was.
It seems like what we're witnessing here, and of course it's, it could be too early to tell, is a retreat for the time being by the Fennica and by the U.S. Coast Guard, perhaps just out of precaution, out of safety, to come back at different times.
Well, now we're starting to see the Coast Guard speed away, Pete, back toward the railroad bridge.
That's what we're thinking.
And now we're not still seeing the railroad bridge start to go up, but now that barge that we saw a short time ago, that is now completely gone. I can't see it at all anymore.
Okay.
So that.
Perhaps when we get...
I don't even know if it was part of the picture. We don't know that.
Right. Perhaps.
But at this point, it looks like the Coast Guard is getting back really close to... You guys maybe have a better view from where I am, but they're really close to the railroad bridge.
Yeah.
And it looks like they're maybe going to reorganize and try and figure this out.
We're just showing you the pictures as it's happening, and we've posed those pictures to law enforcement, asking them, how long they would allow this to continue, and both sides being very careful, saying that safety is their main priority.
Let's, if we could ask Air 12 to turn back to the Fennica, just to give folks some perspective of where it is at this point, because the railroad bridge was lifting, and there you see it moving underneath that bridge.
We described this earlier as the Fennica was, moving toward those protesters. It came within, I don't know how many feet it was, perhaps 500 feet of the bridge, and we described it as a game of chicken. Well, if that's the case, chalk one up for the Greenpeace protesters, because they won round one. But as we've seen before, this is just one battle in what may be a prolonged war, a public relations war between these two sides, and a logistical situation that has to be addressed at some point.
And still so interesting this morning to see that barge move through with the cherry picker on top.
Yeah, and we don't know.
No, we don't know if it had anything to do with it, but
listen,
certainly very ironic.
I guarantee you that it got the attention of everybody who's there, and who knows if it will, if it was a feint, if it was a message, or if it was just a delivery. We'll find out. It is a fluid situation, and I hate to use a pun like that when we're looking at a river, but it is indeed ever-changing.
And again, as the Fennica continues to move south there, away from the St. John's Bridge, that bridge has been reopened to car traffic. At least it looked like. Pedestrians and cyclists probably not at this point, but we did see car traffic once again crossing it, and just in time, because Highway 30 appears to be a complete mess anywhere north of there, heading into the Northwest Industrial.
But you bring up a good point, because, if this is a typical commute for people, they're going to want to keep it in mind for later today. If, they maybe have delayed their travels today, they'll be coming back later, maybe find an alternate route.
Sure.
Because you don't know what's going to happen.
How about if you're in a car that doesn't have air conditioning? Because, we cover the news, we cover weather, we cover traffic, and as far as the weather is concerned, it's worth mentioning that today is expected to be the hottest day since 2012, with temperatures reaching 100 degrees. Now, that may impact how long these people want to hang out here, literally.
Yeah.
How long this party will last. But, chalk one up for the protesters.
We have Deb Gill on the bridge right now, and she's into place, and if we can bring Deb full. There you are, Deb. We know you just got on scene, Deb, and are mic'd up. Let's check in with you, and what are you seeing up there on the bridge right now?
Basically the same thing you guys are. The officers just left. They just cleared the yellow tape and allowed traffic through. They said vehicle traffic, car traffic, trucks will be allowed on both sides of the bridge. The only thing that's still restricted are cyclists and anyone walking across the bridge on the south side. And Mike, if you can pan over just a little bit, they still have the one officer there enforcing that. He is standing there on the bridge, and so far, for now, that is the only restriction going across the bridge. And again, as you guys are seeing from Air 12 and your other vantage points, they are now allowing traffic from both directions across the bridge. Other than that, not seeing anything else other than the one officer there standing on the bridge. The rest of them aren't here anymore.
Yeah, it very, very well could be that this is, all part of the plan. And I keep thinking about the Occupy Portland protest back in 2011 when, a day went by and the police backed off. Everybody said, "Why aren't you doing anything? Why aren't you doing anything?" And then in the early morning hours, or it was actually 12:01 a.m. back on November 13th of 2011, That's when Sam Adams, the mayor at the time, gave the order for the police bureau to clear out and dismantle the park. And that's when the protesters were off guard. This morning, the protesters were on guard.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't surprise me to see this thing come to a conclusion when they are at their weakest point as far as numbers and enthusiasm is concerned.
And as Deb pointed out there, the closure that remains on the bridge is that south sidewalk, and that's the one that the protesters are tethered off of. So effectively cutting off anybody who might be heading out onto the bridge to offer them support or offer them, assistance.
Sure.
Those who are there are remaining, but nobody else is going to have access to where those protesters are tethered to the bridge there on that south side of the sidewalk.
People are impacted. We hear you. We understand the frustrations of a lot of folks here. But these things do occur, and we're bringing you the pictures, live pictures, as it unfolds.
This is the Fenneca once again. It had turned around a short time ago and has made its way under the railroad bridge once again, and it appears not to be moving very quickly at this point. Coast Guard boats there you see on either side. And I think it's anybody's guess now as to what's going to happen next. But rest assured, those protesters are still there, hanging suspended above the water off the St. John's Bridge.
While we're watching all this, I've been trying to sort of check online there as well to try and get a sense of that timeline of when the absolute deadline is that the Fenneca needs to be in position in the Arctic for all of this to go through the way Shell Oil hopes it will, and at which point it's too late.
Initially, Shell was being cagey. What it's about, this is an ice-breaking ship, but what it contains is a cap, okay, folks? It's a cap for an oil drilling operation that could seal off a pipe underwater in case there was some sort of an oil leak, okay? That's required now if you're going to be drilling oil, okay? New laws obviously have gone into effect ever since the disaster in the Gulf. They can't proceed. Shell Oil can't proceed without this. Now, as far as the timing is concerned, the drilling operation cannot be signed off on until that cap is physically there. And this is how they're planning on getting it there, and it's not getting there.
But I don't believe it's an open-ended situation. I think there's a timeline on when that paperwork needs to be signed off.
There is indeed.
And so that would be, once that it becomes mathematically impossible for the ship to be in place, then you would think the protesters would have, made their point, achieved their objective, and would, come up from the bridge. But that's the timeline that's still not quite clear.
Yeah, and I don't think that Shell is ready right now to declare defeat. But that capping stack, that critical piece of equipment, is what is at play. And I do know that it's down to a matter of days. And if they are indeed able to stop the entire drilling operation from getting underway, that would be a major victory for Greenpeace. Regardless, right now, as it stands this morning at 8:01 this morning, they've certainly made their point public relations wise. They've gotten their point across. As to whether you agree with their methodology, with the point they're trying to make, they're making it.
Let's get back to Anthony Congi now. He is near the St. John's Bridge, and he's been covering this for us since yesterday morning. And Anthony, what are you seeing down there right now?
It's just a lot of the same. Not as many people down here at the dock, but a lot of people still just coming down here and documenting it, taking pictures, video, having their kids down here. A lot of the kayakers still here in the water right now. But from what we're seeing, the railroad bridge is actually back down now, almost fully to where it normally would be, and I can barely see the Fenneca now. So at this point, the climber, or I should say the climbing gear is still kind of they're just still hanging there. They're not really going back up to those type hammocks that they had before. They're kind of just dangling there at this point. My guess is before too long that they would make their way back into those kind of sleeper rock climbing hammocks that they had been using. Multnomah County Sheriff still here in the water. Again, it just seems like they're just making sure everybody's being safe, but at least 30 kayaks, I think, probably in the water from what we're seeing at this point. And again, a lot of people down here are clapping, cheering, telling the protesters thank you at this point.
Anthony, from what you've seen over the last day, 24 plus hours, are they swapping out the protesters, or are those the original people who dropped down there yesterday about 3 a.m. in those positions? Are those the same people there today, and they've been there that entire time?
Yeah, they've been there the entire time. Hard to believe that, right? Now, they do have, there's 13 of them, but they also have 13 people up above them. They're giving them food, water. Now, some people have been asking what they do about the bathroom. And this is something that we did actually ask Greenpeace about. And she did say some people are doing things a little bit differently. Some of them actually have adult diapers on. That's how committed they are to this.
Well, as we're
some
watching,
other people are... She
Anthony,
said,
stand by real quick.
Just doing what they can at this point.
Sure, no, that makes total sense. We're watching your image there, and also from Air 12. Now, the Fenneca has once again come around. So now it appears to be facing northbound, which would be heading
toward the protesters.
Downriver, heading back towards the area, at least pointed in that direction of the St. John's Bridge.
It might just be,
now, I will say that was the position that it was docked in before. Obviously, the front of the boat was pointed toward the St. John's Bridge, so they may still just be going back to the original position they had before, because, again, the railroad bridge is fully down, and that's how it was parked the entire time that it was here since we got here yesterday.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay. Yeah, but that was a great question, Tony, because I wondered the same thing if those protesters were maybe...
getting relief. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I wondered the same thing. So
interesting. The Fenneca, although the railroad bridge is down, so it would need to go up for them to go closer to the St. John's Bridge, it has turned around again, pointed in the direction of the St. John's Bridge, but it's not tied up to anything.
No, and you have to wonder if there was some communication taking place. Why would Portland police open up the bridge again if they suspected that perhaps it was coming back? But we don't know. We don't know if there was any conversation taking place.
But they haven't gone back to the pier and tied up.
No.
Yeah. As we watch the movements there of the Fenneca, let's get back to the St. John's Bridge. That's where Deb Gill is standing by. Deb, what's happening there now from your vantage point?
Not a whole lot new and different up here. I keep trying to peer down farther into the bridge, but of course we're back on the St. John's side and can't really see a whole lot from here, other than there's just 2 officers on this end where we are, but on the south side of the bridge, of course, enforcing that one restriction of no cyclists and no one walking on the bridge on that south side. I need to run over and clarify, because at first I was told no one would be able to walk on the north side of the bridge either, but then the last thing an officer told me before he left was the only restriction was the south side. So if we can get down farther on the bridge, we might be able to, we can certainly drive on it now as everyone else can, and that's been a pleasant surprise for people coming through here.
Okay, Deb Gill, thank you very much. We'll check back with you. You're looking at a live picture on the right side of your screen, once again from Air 12. Hard to make out, but those protesters, 13 of them, suspended above the water off the St. John's Bridge, remaining, I guess you could say, declaring a victory at this point in the Fenneca turning around and making its way back toward the dock.
Yeah, and the bigger picture is this ship, the Fenneca, leased by Shell Oil, trying to make its way up to the Arctic. It contains a piece of equipment that is required for the permit to be issued to Shell to begin drilling in that area, that area that's been described as environmentally sensitive by some, by others as an important resource for oil. It contains the ship, this capping stack, and that's the piece of equipment that Shell needs in order to get that signature, one of the final signatures to get the go-ahead to drill for oil. So you see this, situation here on our Willamette River, some people dangling from, a bridge and a tugboat and an ice-breaking ship. Well, the ramifications are much bigger than that, and that is why Greenpeace has targeted this one specific ship here in our city to try to stop this major operation.
Yeah, interesting to compare the big picture, which he did so well there, with the smaller, local level, which is Highway 30 is still an absolute mess. From well north of the St. John's Bridge all the way down into the Northwest Industrial area.
Began shortly after 6 this morning, about 6:30ish, and here we are at 8:07.
And again, if you're just tuning in, that backup that was created by the closure of the St. John's Bridge, as Deb just pointed out, car traffic now moving both directions, both lanes. The northbound sidewalk open, so that would open open it up for cyclists as well. Yeah. The southbound sidewalk is the one that remains closed to cyclists and pedestrians.
You know, we're getting responses from people on Facebook. Somebody writing in saying, enough is enough. They're breaking the law. I guess a felony record means nothing to them. Another person saying these protesters should be honored for trying to keep our planet clean, void of pollution. So you have both sides, you know, voicing their concerns and their frustrations, and we hear you. But yeah, you get the feeling that tomorrow morning we may be waking up to see yet another showdown. Or perhaps, if what we've seen in the past, this will occur sometime when everybody's asleep and at the one moment when everyone is at their most tired and not prepared for a showdown. We certainly have seen that tactic used before here in Portland.
And all this happening on what's going to be the hottest day of the year after a couple of years. We're going to hit 100 today.
Yeah,
so we haven't had a chance to talk about weather much, but certainly a huge story there as well as those temperatures reach triple digits today.
You're watching our continuing breaking news coverage of a protest that is being watched internationally here in Portland. St. John's Bridge. It's nice to see some of that traffic there, Tony, but that's not helping the folks with the backup.
No.
All right, we are going to take a quick break here on Good Day Oregon, and we'll be back in just a moment. Rest assured, we'll be coming back to these pictures, and our reporters down along the water, the Willamette River, are continuing coverage of the Greenpeace protest and movement of the Fenneca this morning. Continues right here on Good Day Oregon.
Things that happened relatively recently was that they reopened traffic on the St. John's Bridge. Deb Gill is there now, as you can see. Deb, what's the latest up there on the St. John's Bridge?
Well, Tony, it's a huge relief for, like you guys were talking about, just the average person who has nothing to do with either side and may not even care, but it affects their livelihood when this bridge was blocked off, creating quite a commute nightmare for people on either side. And both sides, traffic is going through smoothly now. They opened it up about 20 minutes or so. The only restriction is the south sidewalk. The south side of the bridge is closed to people walking or on bicycles. Other than that, this side of the bridge, people can walk even. But yeah, it's open to traffic. And as people have stopped and said, hey, you know, even asked me, when did they open the bridge? And I said, just a few minutes ago. And then they'd immediately get on their phone and tell other people, hey, the bridge is open. So it's definitely a help, at least this part, for just your average person trying to get to work.
Live from Fox 12 Oregon, this is Breaking News.
Welcome back, everybody. Live pictures of, well, what has occurred following a standoff at the St. John's Bridge. On the right side of your screen, you see the Fenneca. That's the ice-breaking ship leased by Shell Oil. And then on the left side of your screen, you see the St. John's Bridge.
Yes, this morning, if you weren't with us a little bit earlier, a dramatic moment when the Fenneca had approached the St. John's Bridge and then stopped. And decided after, boy, it was a half hour that it sat there, decision was made to turn around, and the Fenneca made its way back to where it is sitting now, and wondering if this is going to dock again or what the next move is.
Yeah, this all happening as 13 protesters dangle from the deck of the St. John's Bridge. Let's get to Anthony Kanji now. Anthony, for folks who are just joining us, perhaps explain what you've seen and then also give us the latest on what's happening now.
Yeah, I mean, obviously just a very dramatic showdown and everybody wondering what exactly was going to happen. We had an official with Greenpeace here with us, and they honestly didn't even know what was going to happen. It's kind of the immovable objects, unstoppable force type situation, you know, the chicken race we were, kind of talking about. But the protesters didn't move, and in fact we were seeing more kayakers come into the water, and what we're seeing right now is they're actually going back into those hammock type situations they had before, which is a little bit more comfortable for them. They were about 50 feet lower than where they were about 20 minutes ago, and now they're just kind of getting back into where they were and assuming at this point probably just going back and relaxing. an incredible situation, especially when the Coast Guard was out here warning a couple of the people that were in the water at the time. There was just 2 at that point. Then all of a sudden, we just blinked, and it seemed like there were about 30 these kayakers in the water, also kind of being defiant toward everybody. But again, the Fennica did completely turn back around, went underneath the railroad bridge, and it appears to be docked again now. And now we just wait and see what happens next. So that's the very latest from down here at the bridge itself. We'll send it back to you guys in the studio.
Thanks, Anthony. One of the things that happened relatively recently was that they reopened traffic on the St. John's Bridge. Deb Gill is there now, as you can see. Deb, what's the latest up there on the St. John's Bridge?
Well, Tony, it's a huge relief for, like you guys were talking about, just the average person who has nothing to do with either side and may not even care, but it affects their livelihood when this bridge was blocked off, creating quite a commute nightmare for people on either side. And both sides, traffic is going through smoothly now. They opened it up about 20 minutes or so. The only restriction is the south sidewalk. The south side of the bridge is closed to people walking or on bicycles. Other than that, this side of the bridge, people can walk even. But yeah, it's open to traffic. And as people have stopped and said, hey, you know, even asked me, when did they open the bridge? And I said, just a few minutes ago. And then they'd immediately get on their phone and tell other people, hey, the bridge is open. So it's definitely a help, at least this part, for just your average person trying to get to work.
All right, Deb, thank you very much. As we look at this live picture, we want to talk about our other big story of the day, which is our hot temperatures. We are expected to hit over 100 degrees in many areas up and down the state, and a pretty big deal considering the fact that we haven't seen these temperatures in about, what, 3 years?
Yeah, you have to go back to mid-August of 2012, and it's not just going to be throughout the Portland area. It's going to be from Portland all the way down into southern Oregon. So we are under a heat advisory until late tomorrow night. The other color that you can see is that red color. That's the red flag warning. That's in effect as well. Fire danger is going to remain high. We don't generally see this stretch of temperatures above 90, and we're going to be seeing that really stick around the next 4 or 5 days. Along the Oregon coast, waking up to a little bit of some cloud cover. This is from our Chinook Winds beach camera. 56 degrees. This is going to be the only cool spot you'll see, even along Astoria and Cannon Beach. You'll be seeing temperatures into the low to the mid 80s later on today. We're already at 70 degrees a little after 8 o'clock this morning, and the winds are calm. And looking at some other spots out there, Scappoose is already 75 at this hour. Forest Grove 64 degrees, Sandy 68, and along Multnomah Falls you're looking at a temperature of 70 degrees. And this is going to be staying with us over the next couple of days, that really excessive heat. Unfortunately, we're not going to be seeing much of a cool down until the early part of next week. So extreme heat both today and tomorrow. Will be a little bit cooler heading into the weekend, but even for Saturday and Sunday, you'll be seeing temperatures in the low to the mid 90s. You can see the jet stream well north of us, pushing any threat of precipitation and really any cloud cover out of our way. The only places that we'll be seeing the clouds roll through will be along the Oregon coast. So here we are. You can see the timestamp up there. 3 o'clock today. Nothing but clear skies along the coast, the valley, and into the mountains. A little bit of some clouds will start to increase later on tonight. So by tomorrow morning, again, along the central Oregon coast and into the southern Oregon beaches, you'll be waking up to some low clouds, maybe a little bit of some drizzle here and there. But meanwhile, throughout the valley, you're going to be seeing nothing but sunshine. The other thing we're paying attention to late tomorrow throughout the central Oregon and into the high desert Bend and Redmond, potentially for some thunderstorms develop, not just tomorrow, but into the first part of the weekend as well. That's going to be a reason why that red flag warning is in place. You'll notice toward the end of the weekend, we'll be seeing mostly cloudy skies, but our temperatures will be warm. So it'll be more of that kind of muggy feeling for the second part of the weekend and the early part of next week. Now, along the ocean beaches, sunny and breezy. The warmest temperatures along the coast will be throughout Long Beach and Cannon Beach, getting in anywhere to the low to the mid 80s. Meanwhile, you'll travel south a little bit along Highway 101, 72 degrees to Pacific City. It'll also be kind of breezy, gusts coming in about 25 miles per hour. Meanwhile, throughout the western side of the valley, sunny and many places getting into the triple digits. That'll be the case over to McMinnville and Salem. If you're probably thinking, well, if we're going to be getting into the low 100s, there's a good chance to see some records fall. That won't be the case at Portland, but you hit Salem, there's a good chance you hit 104, maybe even 105. That would be some record heat down in the central and southern part of the Willamette Valley. Up on the mountains, sunny and hot, especially in the valleys. A government camp and ski bowl, 87 degrees. Welch's 93. Freezing level will be at 15,000 feet. And throughout the Columbia River Gorge, sunny and very hot. The one thing that's going to be on your side will be the light winds. But again, the red flag warning will be in place and that heat advisory in effect until late tomorrow. Hood River 101. The Dells, you'll be seeing a high of 105. Sunny and very hot through the east side of the Cascades. Bend 95, same with LeGrand. Pendleton, you'll be seeing a temperature of 100 degrees this afternoon. And once we get past the morning hours in the early part of the afternoon, we'll be seeing temperatures in the mid to the upper 80s, really by lunchtime. A daytime high of 100. Now, the record for this time of year is a 107. That was set back in the mid 60s.
Welcome back, everybody. It's been a busy morning here as we've watched a standoff, if you will, a showdown between the protesters at the St. John's Bridge and the ship that the Shell Oil Corporation has leased to try to make its way up to the Arctic.
Anthony Congi's had a front row seat to this throughout the morning, and we want to check back with him now. And it seems all is calm at the St. John's Bridge for now.
It looks like we've lost Anthony's audio. Anthony, if you can hear us, we're going to let you try to dial that in. And maybe Kim and I can take over.
There we go. I think we have you now.
Yeah, can you guys hear us?
We can.
Absolutely. Take it away.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, so we were just talking with the people from...
Oh, now
is anxious and watching it with We Are. Can you guys hear me at this point?
We can. Go ahead, Anthony.
Okay, yeah, so Greenpeace was just watching as we were. She did tell me, though, there was never a point that she was actually nervous for the climbers' safety, which I thought was actually very interesting. She said they were in direct contact with the people on the boat itself, and again, it was more of just kind of a showdown. We talked, you know, kind of like a chicken fight, you know, who's going to blink first. She said she was never actually nervous. I found that very interesting. So a lot of the people that were here, they're kind of starting to go back now. It's a lot quieter here now, as you talked about. The climbers that had rappelled a little bit farther down to be in the physical way of the Fennica have now climbed back up. So now they're just kind of be staying the course. I did ask her also what the plan was with this excessive heat, not only yesterday, today, and even the next day after that. She just said we're just going to continue to monitor them, make sure they have all the supplies they need. I did ask about the possibility of them maybe swapping out with some other protesters. She said no, the 13 people that are hanging are going to stay hanging, and as we have been talking about the entire time, they're going to be there for, they say, as long as it takes. I did also ask, what's the plan going forward? What are you going to do? They said at this point they're just going to wait and see, just like we are. And that's the latest from down here. I'll send it back to you in the studio.
And as we watch this play out today, we'll have to see what happens on the St. John's Bridge, because the traffic was impacted this morning from 6:30 on.
Yeah, no matter where you stood on the issue, if you had to commute there, Deb Gill, as we check in with you, you were impacted. A lot of folks had to deal with a big backup.
Yeah, I talked to a few folks that said it was really a pain for them, and they adjusted, and they were just ecstatic when they saw the yellow tape come down and the officers' cars move out of the way and saw that traffic was open, got on their cell phones and told other people, hey, the bridge is open, we can use it again. The only movement that we are seeing are from the officers that are on the only part of the bridge that's closed, and that's the south side sidewalk. And you can see the officer there basically making sure that no one on foot or on a bicycle is on that side of the bridge. And we've seen them rotate. There's a little substation here in St. John's, and people, the officers have changed hands several times, presumably to get a break, maybe a bathroom break, and get some water. So it looks like they're in it for the long haul. It's going to be a hot day for them if they have to stay out here on the bridge for another day, given what happened yesterday. But so far, it doesn't look like they're gearing up to do anything major. But of course, they're not telling us their plans. Pete and Kim, back to you.
Deb, thank you.
Yeah, it's really a question of tactics. We'll have to see how it all unfolds.
Taking you back now to video from earlier this morning. This is the Fennica, which had tried to make its way toward the St. John's Bridge, but stopped short and made its way back to dock.
Yeah, it really was a game of chicken, if you will. You'll see those protesters who have been dangling from the St. John's Bridge right there. For the last, 30 hours or so. At one point, you see this barge that made its way through. It was able to barely clear there, and there was a cherry picker on there. At one point, we thought, because the Coast Guard was there issuing warnings that these people might be subject to arrest, that perhaps that cherry picker was going to be put into play. That didn't turn out to be the case this morning, but it was just hard to know what would happen. It was a dramatic situation, and we'll have to wait and see what happens in the hours and days to come.
We'll, of course, be following this all day. Of course, we're following the extreme heat we're having, too. Let's get to Joe for that.
Yeah, the extreme heat is going to continue here the next couple of days, especially this afternoon. Now, by noon, we'll be at 85 degrees, a daytime high of 100 degrees, and a few locations just south of Portland will be getting into the low 100s. We're looking at maybe 102 to even 105 in a few spots. That'll be the case near Salem. Record today is 107. We won't get it to it, but it's going to be pretty darn hot. 97 for tomorrow. Good chance we could get close to 100 heading into tomorrow afternoon as well. Let's get a last check of the roads with Tony.
Thanks, Joe. Still pretty busy coming out of Vancouver. We're delayed north and south of the Interstate Bridge, so definitely much slower than usual for this time of morning. On the Sunset coming in, Sylvan down to 405. That's still backed up, and also over on the Banfield, it's going to be slow there between 205 and the I-5 interchange.
How about some ice cream for a good cause after this morning?
Yeah, it's not very often that we'll plug something on the air like this, but when it's for the kids,
we'll do it.
And when it's frozen like this, and it's going to be like the hottest day ever. This is the Children's Miracle Network.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, the Dairy Queen having their Miracle Treat Day. Just $1 from every Blizzard treat sold at Dairy Queen's goes to help the Children's Miracle Network.
Yes.
Stop by today and cool off and do a good thing.
On a hot day, isn't it?
We'll try one for you right now.
Here's a win right here. Thanks for joining us, folks.
Go to kptv.com for coverage today.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
That's for you.
Thank you.